Alrighty, gun people, survivalists, preppers, preparist, reasonable, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk about, got my little high profile police check on. It's a little cold out here, so if I gotta throw this on, then people say I dress the part. Alright, again, we talked about this before. Recognition. The reason why cops wear things like this, military will mark themselves. If somebody approaches you from the rear, you want them to know that you're a cop. I like, and when I made jackets or designed these for safety gear, and I bought them for the department, I would make sure it says police down the side. Most agencies wear a patch because when officers approach, they can see the police or the patch, recognizing that who the cop is really quick and instinctively, or not instinctively, but it just becomes second nature. You kind of recognize who the cops are. When we were working undercover, California, we always wore our Hawaiian shirts. And I'll probably wear one during the videos. And when you showed up on the scene, you'd see 5 guys in Hawaiian shirts. Well, that was kind of like our little internal code. We always recognized each other because we knew we had our Hawaiian shirts on. We were undercover in case we could spot one of our buddies or whatever. So high profile gear is a recognition. We're always talking about that same constant reinforcing positive things, doing things the same way, training the eye and the mind to see and hear the same thing without thinking about it, those code words. So what we're going to talk about today is what's called inner limb interaction. This is a limb, this is a limb. So we have inner limb interaction to where they both do the same thing subconsciously or due to some response, either the startle response, the sympathetic squeeze or the squeeze response, or some people call it the fall response. If you fall, lose your balance, loss of balance. Those are all terms for the inner limb interaction. Cops kind of use it as inner limb interaction. Basically, it's kind of what started the drawing the gun and keeping the finger off the trigger till you're ready to shoot. I was watching some movie the other day and I watched cops come in there, and I forgot what it was, maybe a Clint Eastwood something, but all the cops are running around with their finger on the trigger. They're clearing houses. They've got their guns pointed everywhere. There's no such thing as lasering. There's no such thing as finger off the trigger. That was a concept that was kind of developed because of this inner limb interaction. People realize that when you have your finger on the trigger and this hand is in a fist response, kind of like this hand, when one hand does something, the other hand has a sympathetic or instinctual response to do the same thing. If somebody throws a sheet of paper at you, your hands go up instinctively to protect your face. If they throw a ball, instinctively your hands will come up. If you're holding a gun with your finger on the trigger and you have to fight or be aggressive like cops or people in the military do when we're either detaining or arresting somebody, when this finger's on the trigger, if I grab you and start a fight, this hand will instinctively clench, which causes an accidental discharge, an AD, a sympathetic fire, whatever you want to call it. It causes your gun to go off when you didn't want it to go off. Well, what happens when a gun goes off and you don't want it to go off is somebody gets shot or somebody gets hurt. And then you have all kind of paperwork, and you got somebody crying because they got a bullet hole. Well, what happens is you don't want to go through that. You don't want to lose your job, your career. You don't want to do it as a civilian. I mean, I have some law enforcement that watch this, and to be honest, I mean, I come from different agencies and different backgrounds, so cops can learn from different agencies, and cops they don't like to share things public. They don't like to ask questions. It's kind of that ego, macho, kind of you got to know what you're doing. You can't show weakness. So if cops are watching this may be something that your agency isn't training or should be training. It may be something that somebody had in the military, either Coast Guard, Marines, Army, whatever. When you were in there and you did weapons training, they might have talked about inner limb interaction. It's kind of caught on to where it's more popular. I still don't hear it a lot in the civilian community, but in cops it's pretty well known. Inner limb interaction. Again, when I'm talking about these things, is to get you aware and to understand the concepts on what happens when you're handling a gun. We have a lot of people, especially in Texas, everybody carries a gun, and I love it. I think everybody should carry a gun because it makes crooks nervous and it makes good guys feel safe. Now there's a bunch of bleeding heart liberals that are, oh, if you got a gun, you may shoot me and I'm scared and whatever. All right, you know what? Look, I'd rather good guys have guns than bad guys, period. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And for people to run around thinking that if we take guns from all the good guys, somehow that's going to stop a bad guy, well, you're living in la-la land. It's just foolish. It's stupid government control, brainwashing crap to get you to give up your guns. Big Second Amendment guy, I said that when I started this channel. I think people need to be involved. These guns are the greatest equalizer out there. It makes things equal. But education, understanding the gun, they don't train people like that. I mean, cops go in and we carry guns and it's kind of like second nature, and we do stupid things with guns, and we handle guns because it's a piece of equipment that we handle every day. We handle a gun like some guy working on construction handles a saw, or some guy that drives for a living gets in a car. We're on auto mode, and it's just because we handle a gun. Military, if you're in a unit that handles a gun every day, not a lot of units handle a gun every day when they're working. They're doing a lot of training, classroom, they're doing other things. So they don't have a gun kind of with them all the time. Your combat units that are out there where you don't leave your gun, they handle a gun every day. It becomes second nature. That can be good and bad. It's good because you've done habit and you don't have to think about it. It's always with you. You know where it's at. Everything you do with it is instinctive. You don't have to think a whole bunch. So that's good. The bad thing, when something becomes normal and routine, you get a little lax. You kind of lose respect. You kind of disregard the danger and the power of this gun. This gun can kill somebody, but it can't kill anybody any worse than a car running over somebody at 40 miles an hour. Nobody talks about taking away cars when people are getting killed because of drunk drivers. Because it's the drunk driver that killed them, not the car. When somebody does something stupid with a gun, it's the stupid person that did it. If the camera moves, my chickens are walking around it. Sometimes I like to peck it when I'm filming. I don't know why. It's an harassment thing. Why? I got one pecking on it, so if the camera's moving, I got a chicken here. Why are you putting pressure on my chicken? This chicken's stalking me. Bark, bark, bark. What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you chasing me? Help! Stop! Stop your aggressive actions! Freeze! Don't come any closer! Don't make me shoot you! Got this chicken trained to work with me here. Verbalizing, we talked about verbalizing. When you're talking, you're kind of telling other people what to do. You're telling other people what's going on. It's causing you to breathe, exhale. A lot of times people freeze up and suck their breath in and hold it. That causes tremors, causes all kinds of things. So talking, verbalizing kind of helps you. Sometimes you don't want to verbalize. You don't want to give away your position. But back to inner limb interaction. You may hear it called the sympathetic squeeze response, the fight aggressive response, the startle response. You're looking for something, your finger's on the trigger, a door slams the window, you're like, ah! And you scream and bang, the round goes off. If your finger's not on the trigger, the round doesn't go off. I've heard so many people, man, my gun just went off, I don't know how. I'm like, I know how, you big dummy. Your finger was on the trigger and you pulled it. I can't tell you the number of accidental discharges where people are like, I think it's a safety. No, you know, it's kind of like when you pull somebody over for speeding and they go, man, my speedometer's not working. Or, you know what? My brakes weren't working, so I had to speed up because I was going to test the brakes. It's always a mechanical failure when a stupid human does something that they shouldn't do. When you got a gun, you can't afford mistakes. So understanding all the responses, understanding the importance of keeping that finger off that trigger. When you're pointing, even if I'm aiming, even if I'm being aggressive, even if I'm coming in on somebody, the finger's always off the trigger until I'm ready to shoot. Again, that's one of the main safety things that we talk about. Don't point your barrel at anything you don't want to destroy. Don't laser. Don't sweep. Keep your gun pointed in a safe direction. Keep your finger off the trigger. Don't load the gun unless you're ready to shoot or you're carrying it for a loaded purpose. Those are all the things that are primarily safety. So the big important thing about this inner limb interaction is understanding the purpose of why you don't want your finger on the trigger. How quickly something can go bad if you run around with your finger on the trigger. And when I saw that cop movie on TV the other day and all these cops, if you look at the old cop movies, they didn't have good technical advisors. They had some cop that didn't know no better, and they were like, "Oh yeah, all cops carry the finger on the trigger. You got to be ready to shoot. You don't want to have to move your finger from here to here to shoot." And that's kind of like the old way it used to be. If you watch the old movie on It's a Wonderful Life around Christmas that everybody sees. If you remember, the guy comes out and hits the cop says stop, pulls out his gun and starts shooting at the guy in a busy street with people running around. And he's trying to shoot the guy because he pushed him. Now that would never happen now, because there's been all kind of case law that, look, if you shoot a gun, you have to be shooting at somebody. That's a danger. That's a violent threat. Can you justify shooting somebody because they pushed you? Well, believe me, it's been done and people do it, but you have to have a whole bunch of justification, okay? If a guy just killed 4 people and he come out and pushed you, and now he's running, you don't know if he has another gun, then maybe you can shoot him and the unknowing person would say you shot him just because he pushed you. You have to have a whole bunch more than just pushing. But back in the day, when that old movie was made, It's a Wonderful Life, you didn't mess with cops. Cops shot whenever they want to, and if you didn't listen to me, I'd just shoot you. And if you ran away from me, I could shoot you in the back. And that was how law enforcement has changed over the years. Use of force, case law, new law developing on when you can shoot and when you can't. I mean, you would never see a reasonable guy who's thinking about his career or killing somebody innocent, shoot into a crowded street at a guy running just because he pushed him. Now, would I shoot at a guy on a crowded street? Yes, there are circumstances where you would shoot at that guy. If he's got an assault rifle and he just killed 14 people and he's on a murder rampage and he's running, you have to take that shot even though you might hit someone else. Because if he gets away, he may kill 50 other people because you're afraid that you may miss and shoot one person. But that's a big evaluation, and if you shoot and hit him, you're a hero. If you shoot and miss him and hit a kid, you're the worst guy in the world, you violated policy and you're going to jail. So there's always that fine line between hero and go to jail. And that's where we talk about that lag time, that decision process. When we draw our gun, what are the complications? What's causing that lag time? Part of the things that are causing a lag time is, am I going to shoot somebody? Am I going to lose my career? If you're in an actual fight or flight, you don't think about any of that. You think you're about to die and you're going to shoot. So that's kind of the justification on when you use your gun. So, let me end this up here. When we're talking about inner limb interaction, we're talking about the finger, the fall response. If my finger's on the trigger and I fall, when I naturally put my hand down, I don't want to hit my face. I may use both hands. When I put both hands down, I may squeeze my hand. I may squeeze that bullet. When I'm running around my finger on the trigger, if I'm clearing a wall or something bumps into me and they bump that trigger, it's going to fire the gun. So if I'm working in close quarters and another cop elbows me and my finger's on the trigger, I could cause a gun to go off. Your finger shouldn't be on the trigger. It needs to be off the trigger, it's off slide. It's an important thing. And inner limb interaction is just one of the reasons why you keep your finger off the trigger. Okay? And that there, I hope that helps on kind of getting you in the right frame set, understanding different concepts of guns, handling guns, all the things that goes into handling guns, the things you need to remember, the things that may not be so obvious, but there's a reason, there's a rhyme. If you got questions on other things that you see on TV or movies or whatever, you want to ask me about it, I can try to explain it from a working standpoint on why it's there, whether it was a good technical advisor or VAZ, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's, you know, whatever the circumstance. So I'll say hello to my little horses out there before we sign off. Hi, boys! All right, we'll end that there. Buddy, you're good boys.